Surprised?
You're right.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. It's the 28th of September. This is the Personnel and Higher Education committee meeting. And let's start with privilege of the floor. I don't see any public comment. Pause for a second. Seeing none, move on to
For the minutes.
motion to approve the minutes. Our meeting, Supervisor McDavid, Supervisor Ritu, thank you. Any changes, recommendations? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. Let's move on to action agenda. Jackie. Report on vacancies and 24 budget.
So I have the report on the intent to fill process for your review. If anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer.
I don't see any.
Okay. As usual. And I have my 2024 budget request. It's the part that's in the reports from the world it's very similar to last year, actually decreased a little bit. There's a couple of contracts that have gone down, and some things like accommodation requests, we're asking for less money than in the past. Some of the larger departments that have more of the requests have actually started funding for them in their own department budgets, which has been helpful. So I think main items of note would be my personnel requests. I've asked for new titles for both positions in my office. I've been very lucky. I don't know, maybe I get some credit. I don't know. I've been hiring people, I'm not sure, but I have a couple of great people who've been here for a couple of years each. The timing, it turned out there's some civil service tests coming up for the next level of position, and in comparing what they actually do day to day with their job descriptions, I think it's time to upgrade those. So I'm happy to answer any questions on those. And then I did put in a request for an increase for myself, which you can see there as well. Don't ask, the answer is automatically no. So, and again, happy to answer any specific questions.
Any questions from the committee? Okay. No, I'm sorry. Jackie and I talked about these. I'm in support of them. As probably most other committee chairs are typically in support of salary increases for their team. But I believe that there's an opportunity for us, and I don't see Frank. Oh, Frank is here. Sorry, Frank. That we've created a bit of a disparity through some of the salary changes that we've gone through, and especially with new hires and the like, that I think we need to find some way to work through. And Frank and I have kind of briefly talked about it, but it's not probably something that we can do all at once. But I think it would be wise for us to consider some type of transition that gets us to where we need to be to make sure we have parity across the different leadership and their teams. So Frank, the challenge is going to be you, on you, and the budget committee, of course. But that's I think that's something we need to consider moving forward with. So any other questions with respect to the budget for Jackie? Seeing none. Thank you, Jackie. Anything else from the agenda?
No.
I was going to ask her about the biggest challenges she has, but considering that we're an hour plus late, I think we'll skip that until the next meeting. And we'll give Jackie more time to think about what her biggest challenge is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trish, I think you're up next. This one we have a request for a new contract. Is that what we're seeing?
Yeah, so yearly contract. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
It's our yearly contract for medical services for our police, City of Glens Falls police recruits and our Warren County Patrol recruits. There's a requirement that there be medical testing, and we pay the fees for that and process those administration of those services. So we update that contract every year.
Okay, need a motion to bring that to the floor. Supervisor Thomas, thank you. Second by Supervisor McDevitt. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Trish, budget?
So for my budget, the 400, we did a few minor increases that, and I'm just going to start by saying in the past, I've really tried to ask for nothing, and this time I'm asking for a few things. So I'm just going to put it out there, but I was very conscious of the fact that Frank has a lot to balance. And I talked about that when we were in the workshop, but I do feel like I owe it to the department to put these out for your consideration. So the telephone went up $400 because we got a second phone through the ARPA program. So now we're paying for that. I increased the miscellaneous fees and expenses a couple $1,000. And the reason is those fees go to the cost of materials for testing. When we order tests and get the materials from the state, we have to pay them a fee for them. And as we are holding more and more tests, doing an expanded testing program to provide for recruitment and retention, I added another $2,000 to that. So we would not be short. We don't pay that until February of the following year. So we wouldn't want to have to take it out of the next budget. So that's what that is. And the other increase was just to round out the medical fees. We include in that line all the different medical services that we have. So we never know year to year how many people they're going to be recruiting. So if they each do 5 1 year, which has happened, then it, we're pushing envelope. If they don't recruit many, if Warren County does not have a lot of retirements, you may see that that's not used, and we don't use it for anything else other than paying for the agility exams that relate also to the recruitment of our police and patrol. So anything that we don't use doesn't get touched out of that, those fees. It's a guess where we might be if there's a heavy year of recruitment. So those are my 400. My big ask this year is a thought for preparing for the future. And what I did was, we have been very blessed to have test administrators who have been with us for many years, who have tested for us and hold exams. I mean, I walk through the grocery store and people come in and say to me, oh, people were afraid to take tests, and they got there and they were so comfortable. Everybody explained really well and helped them get through. We have a great testing program that way, and we'd like to be able to start bringing some people in to learn how to use the same program processes. And we also are lucky enough that one of our test administrators has been working part-time for us. She retired as secretary of the dean over at CUNY. So she's been helping us a lot. And what we've learned is that we're hoping to expand our testing program, upgrade our program technology, including we're trying to go to online application processes. We're trying to increase our outreach, and we're also trying to, for our towns and schools, spend a lot more time educating that. How do we do that with the staff we have and the requirements we have? We're asking for a one-time ask, for which Supervisor Wild has asked that we really highlight that it's one-time request of $15,000. So we have our part-timer continue into next year. What we foresee her doing is when we have very happy applications, she helps us keep all the paperwork flowing, which in the past getting backlogged has been a huge problem. She's also, and so is staff, but we need to work on getting time to free up to upload onto this new platform, including online application. It takes a lot of time to do that, and IT has been great, and they are ready for the first round. So we thought if we asked for that, we would have an opportunity to consider accomplishing our goals. So that's where I am.
Excellent. Any questions for Trish on the budget? Any request for additional staff to help with testing? Seeing none? Because the budget officer has heard this again for a second time.
Yep.
So we shall see how it all falls out. But thank you, Tricia. Appreciate that.
Thanks for your consideration.
And next is
Amanda asked to sit first till the end.
skip Amanda's to the end. So we'll move to attorney attorney. Larry,
Super. Thank you.
we have a budget request and an executive session possible.
Let's do the budget first, if that's agreeable.
I think that'll work just fine.
I'm going to throw up I'm going to show a series of slides up on the monitor as soon as I can hit the share feature. For the next 2 hours, I'm going to go through the county attorney's budget in great detail for everybody. And I'm hoping
Shoot yourself in the foot, Larry.
and I can do this in less than 5 minutes. So. So as a quick overview, in the hundreds on personal services, the actual department request is lower than the 590,000 that's listed. The actual will be 550,816 as it's noted in what you have in front of you. That's a total reduction of just about $39,500 for 2024. And my budget really is based on an assumption that I hope will hold true for my staff and other out-of-unit staff. And that's that there'll be some COLA adjustment effective January 1st of 24 for the out-of-units going into 2024, especially since there will not be any mid-year adjustments for out-of-unit employees based on current resolutions. There's no changes in the 200 line. We haven't requested any equipment in the last 2 years. And then on the 400s, there was a one-time expense in 2023 that my department took in resolving a longstanding employment claim from 2018 and 2019. I'm anticipating that there will be 0 settlements involving my department in 2024 and hopefully into the future. And then I just note in part that the overall budget, and I want to make sure I get the intent of this stated properly, that there are expenses that my office carries in their budget, which are expenses like outside counsel for a defense of a lawsuit or lawsuits that is defending other departments' lawsuits. So I'm not suggesting a change in that, but just a sensitivity that there's a good number, about $90,000 of the department's budget is based on providing expenses or services or flowing through contracts to outside counsel for services that aren't really county attorney services as much as they are defense services or other types of expenses for other departments in the county. And then really there's no comment on the 800s that's outside of our department's control. So when we look at personnel, I'm really looking at 2 shifts for 2 attorneys. And what you're looking at here, and 2 departments with attorneys have already briefed their committee. And I don't really want to go into any of the details of what was said there. But there's attorneys in Warren County government, and they're in 4 locations: the DA's office, the public defender, the county attorney, and then the Department of Social Services has attorneys that fall under their framework as well. When I started the prior administrator explained to me that the attorney schedule, which has 5 grades and then increments going out to the 30th increment, had a line in it, and there was a line between the grade 3 and the grade 4. And that line, which you don't see on what I reproduced here, was a line that separated staff attorneys from supervisory attorneys. And I point this out because I have used that information since I've started in formulating where my personnel requests would be and where people should fall on this schedule. I just state as a concern that it seems that that line of a difference between supervisory position attorneys and staff attorneys may be starting to break down. And that breakdown is going to cause some inconsistencies in inequities between those 4 locations of attorneys in our county, between the PD, the DA's office, the county attorney, and the DSS attorneys. So, because if that line doesn't exist, the request that's grade moving the second assistant county attorney from a grade 3 increment 4 to a grade 5 would most likely be a request to increase his grade into a 4 grade rather than a 3. But that's not there because that position currently, while the individual is clearly an informal leader and is in charge and supervising family court actions, which we'll talk about in a second. I've kept that request at the grade 3 because on the chart, there's only 2 supervisors in my department, and that's the county attorney and the first assistant. The second request you'll see is moving the 3rd assistant county attorney from the entry grade, the entry increment to the 1st increment at grade 1. And again, that position was filled with the understanding that it was a new attorney coming in at the entry level. And I believe he's the only attorney that's come in at entry level that I could find in recent history. So that small request is a request to move him that 1st increment from entry to 1st. Overall, on the personnel requests, this is what we have. This is the 2024 budgeting salary schedule as it was provided, and then the actual request. And what you'll notice is the change in the 2nd assistant, making it a grade 3 increment 5, and the 3rd assistant moving him from grade 1 to increment 1. And then the cost savings is to defund that legal assistant number 2 position, keep it as an open position. And that makes the actual 550,816. And then the total decrease is going to be just under $40,000. Trends and concerns, I kind of talked about the attorney pay scale. My concern is retaining attorneys, and if I need to, getting new attorneys to fill spots or create new spots on a pay scale that is across the county starting to get bumped up on the top tier, on the top tiers. Civil litigation, we're doing a tremendous amount of time and hours on in-house litigation. Often it's because in years past, there have been insurance coverage that has been declined or timely notice hasn't been given of a claim or a potential claim. And that's concerning because the more time that we invest in that civil litigation, which is really some potential 7-figure verdict cases for where there is no insurance coverage. Is going to take more time away from doing the in-house counsel advising the board and the departments. The third change, which I want to highlight, is whether there's going to be a change to the tax foreclosure laws between now and December 31st. The most likely change, as I briefed this committee before, would be a moratorium that would potentially put a 12-month stay in place, or at least the stay through June of 2024 of any tax foreclosure actions. That affects my budget. There's a bill that's been sitting in front of Governor Hochul, I believe, since June, that has not been signed. That would impact the revenue side of my budget, because we're estimating, absent that moratorium, 70,000 of income, which is all income that's generated as a result of abstracting title for properties that would potentially end up in the 2024 tax foreclosure proceeding, which is a big shift for us if we're not doing that abstracting, because a moratorium comes into place. And we're getting really close to the point where we're going to start having to do that abstracting. And that's a cost that then gets incurred on the individual parcels through the treasurer's office. The fourth point, which is really the one that's I'm focusing on more and more, is the impact of Raise the Age on the county attorney's office. If you look at the total numbers from 2018 into 2023, we've gone from 7 actions in family court on an annual basis. And as of yesterday, we're up to 46. And our actions are different than PD's or DA's office in a sense of, we get documentation from law enforcement, but it's on us to actually prepare pleadings and file pleadings and to collect sworn statements if they're not properly provided in the first instance by law enforcement, which does happen. So each of those 46 is a substantial amount of time, energy, and effort just to get a case filed in the family court before we start that process of court appearances, hearings, and when necessary, trials. So, we're going to continue working with the staff that we have in place. But that increase in numbers is, there's only so many hours in a day, week, month, and year. And that 46 is drastically shifting the focus of some of our other work into that core area, which we're responsible for. And the other side of that is it's nothing that you ever see or hear. You see you may see an article in the Chronicle about something happening with juveniles, but the details and specifications are all confidential. It's nothing that we report on a case-by-case basis. But some of these matters take substantial time, energy, and effort to work through to disposition. Are there any questions on any of those personnel items? So the 2 million, when you look at the 400s, there's 2 lines in there. I'm giving you the detailed breakdown on subscriptions, travel, conferences, and education. We have an increase of request for an increase of $2,200 on the travel, conference, education. It's really education. And I lay out for the committee each of the core training opportunities that we get some great reduced pricing for in the county attorney's office. And number 6 on the bottom of my chart is professional development. There really has been no funding for staff development or for any attorney skills development outside of the core programs that are run for county attorneys or the summer series. So I am looking for $1,250 to be able to start doing some staff development in 2024, as well as some further skills development that we're not picking up in the offered courses. On the subscription, there's a slight increase of about $500 and that's almost all related to our upgrading the Lexus system, which has been approved for 2023. 2024 cost you'll see is $363 per month. We're basically going from a Yugo to a mid-level vehicle for purposes of our legal research. And then just to highlight that plus or minus $90,000, there's some items that are in our department request every year: postage, advertising, outside counsel. A lot of times, well, a good portion of those expenses are related to core functions such as the tax foreclosure through the treasurer's office, employment negotiations on union contracts, as well as outside lawsuits for uncovered, non-covered insurance matters. Out of that 95,000, really, there's about 5,000 of expense that my office anticipates spending in 2024. The remainder will be spent, but it'll be spent through outside counsel, defense, as well as tax foreclosure, if tax foreclosure goes forward. And that is the end of my presentation. Are there any questions on my office's budget for 2024? Thank you. Oh,
As you do.
To confirm, a third assistant county administrator would gross less than $75,000 a year as an entry. Entering your office year one.
no, we had an individual who started last fall. His position is the third assistant county attorney
Yep.
position. He started at about 72, which was the entry level first grade position, which is where we started him as a new attorney and a new hire. So we're looking to increase that one increment. And our estimate, that's the only position that actually brings, quote unquote, brings in revenue for the county. It's not the kind of revenue we want to bring in, but it's based on people who don't pay their taxes and our need to do that tax search. So if that doesn't happen, that'll be on the revenue side, $70,000 that we don't have. On the flip side, in the short term, it'll give us an extra hand on the family court matters until we start back up tax foreclosure proceedings under some new statute.
Any other questions? So Larry, I see in your agenda that you have a request for executive session. Is it all right if we postpone that and keep that
Absolutely.
YouTube open for the remainder?
Absolutely.
So my first item, last month I came and asked you to amend the contract with Fitzgerald Morris Baker Firth for bond counsel services to extend the term through the end of 2023. When I did that, I neglected to request that you also address the not to exceed amount. So that in the original contract, it was not to exceed $7,000 for the term. When we extended that by another year, I should have asked for that to be changed to say $7,000 per year. A not to exceed amount. Also, the auditor noted on the bill, they're charging $350 per hour, and this original resolution from 2021 was for $300 per hour. So I need to amend 430 of 2023, which amend the contract with Fitzgerald again to say that the $7,000 not to exceed amount will be per year, and that the hourly rate would be $350 and not $300. And that will allow us to pay the bill that the board already authorized.
Need a motion to bring that to the floor? Supervisor McDevitt, second by Supervisor Thomas. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, I call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries.
Thank you. And my other item is just my budget request. If you look, the first page of item 4B has a summary of the changes. There really wasn't that much that we changed. We increased reproduction expenses. That's for the proceedings book. That increased by $99. That's just because our proceedings books have been larger than normal. And subscriptions, the price of the CoStar subscription has increased, so we increased that line by $30. Data processing and internet fees, that amount's given us to my department by IT, that's an increase of $60. In foods, we haven't used that budget line in the last 2 years, so we're just zeroing that out. And then under municipal association and dues, that's another of my budgets. The NISAC membership has increased by $348. The rest of the budgets I manage that are in here, I didn't make any changes to. Any changes to those are, salary and fringe or insurance that I don't have any control over. So if anyone has any questions.
Questions on the budget? Seeing none? Is that it?
That's it for me.
Good for you. So, Attorney Oman, would you mind helping me with the request for an executive session and the statutes?
It's going to be under public officers law. The purpose of the request is to discuss pending and current litigation matters.
So, motion for executive session? Supervisor Thomas, Supervisor Ito, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, we'll enter executive session. Thank you.